Two more batting collapses have put England on the brink of losing the third England-West Indies Test match, and questions have risen again about their performances under captain Joe Root, as well as the lingering questions on their bowling attack, which is looking pretty toothless. They couldn't clinically finish off a West Indies lower order with like only 2 wickets needed. They took one at the very start, and then after that, another 60 runs were scored. Apart from this, on Saturday, the IPL officially started, and it started with some classic MS Dhoni batting, which we haven't really seen very much, over the last couple of years. Not enough 50s from MS Dhoni. We'll look at that later on the Completely Cricket podcast. As usual, please like, subscribe, and share this episode with anyone you know who likes cricket. Without further ado, let's get started. We have to start with England West Indies because it's just so shocking, yet it seems really familiar. It's basically what we saw last year. I think England have a whole a knack of giving everyone hope by scoring a couple of centuries. Scoring something big like 500, for example, they did score. Then after that, just completely shattering all of it by just getting out so quickly. Obviously, we've spoken a lot on this podcast about why it might have happened, what the specific issues, do we need personnel change, things like that. But I think it's honestly, for me, it's just down to a lack of responsibility. Zaid, do you agree with that? Do you think it's just down to England top order batters just not playing carefully enough and not realizing that they're we're dependent on them to score? They can't rely on the middle and lower order.
Yeah, so I would agree with you. It definitely is a lack of responsibility. I just think a lot of players, a lot of batsmen at the top order, they're just really not batting. They're not really looking at I'm at the top order. I need to bat long and bat for a long time. I think we can give Alex Lees a bit of an exception. I think he's actually done pretty decent. Also, he's new to Test cricket, so you can't really put the blame on him. But I think English batting as a whole, it's been I think for a while now in the Ashes and all that. I just think a lack of responsibility and a lack of coordination. It's all good picking batsmen or bowlers or players that just are good, but you need to look at the sort of conditions you're in or the balance of your team. I just don't think England are thinking about that enough, and then that comes under Root's captaincy as well. There's been plenty of questions on him as well, and I just think England's batting just not enough coordination or responsibility. They just really need to maybe their top four just have a long discussion about what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. Because if you can plan an innings, then it's much easier to do it. Then you've got to know where do you want to go after 20 overs or after the first session. And then I think now that'll help England much more, because at the moment it's just looking like a lack of coordination and responsibility.
Yeah, no, I think it's just, honestly, I think there's a point where the discussions is not enough. And now I think we've by far reached that point. We had a horrible test year last year. I think we won one test, we drew two and lost everything else. And it was just a lack of, there was lack of responsibility, lack of, might have been the wrong staff in charge, wrong players pick, for example. Now we're supposed to be on our, the starting phases of the red ball reset. We did talk about this last episode, with John Bathan, but are we actually? Is there an actual red ball reset? It doesn't look like it, because there's just not been enough change. And the fact is that we can't have discussions anymore. I think it's just got to be more. It's got to be more to do with the mentality of the batters. A lot of people like Zach Crawley. You're an opener, and he's sort of playing like a T20 or an ODI opener. He's going at loose balls. But the reality is that, especially at the start of a test match, that's not going to help. That's honestly not going to help. You shouldn't be going after loose balls. You should just control yourself, have a bit of patience. And we've seen that in other test matches with them, but even in England West Indies test match, Nkrumah Bonner, showed a lot of patience, a lot of control. You see people like Azhar Ali as well in Pakistan showing a lot of control. But there's just such a lack of control by England's batters. They're if they see a ball, they just go after it and just get out in the most stupid of ways. And it's really frustrating. But also there is a feeling now that England are just scoring. England's scoring run. They scored 500, I think, last test, and that was on a completely dead pitch, which didn't offer anything to the bowlers. people like Chris Woke struggled on that pitch to bowl because it was so dead, and it's understandable. But when it really comes to what's important, when there's a proper pitch that, which is like a lot of pitches in Test cricket, which has swing, seam and swing, we just cannot perform, and that's the truth. And reality is that if it's going to continue going like this, we just got to do another reset, got to swap more people off. But Zay, do you think we've got the strongest team on? Do you think this is the strongest team that England can play, in even batting and bowling, or do you think there could be some additions?
To be fair, I think this team is looking strong, but like there's still some questions going around the England setup. Like you've just left out your two main bowlers, Stuart Broad and James Anderson. And yes, I wouldn't really bring both of them on tour. I would probably bring one of them, and doesn't really matter who you bring, maybe Stuart Broad, or doesn't really matter. But I just think one of them needs to be there, like to give, like they're Anderson and Broad, they're not going to be around for too long now. So I just think while they're coming to the back end of their career, they just need to pass on some of the experience some of the knowledge of the cricket they have, and all the years of experience that they've got. They can pass that on to younger bowlers, Matthew Fisher, Saki Mahmood, Ollie Robinson. These are great bowlers. They just need that sort of support from a great bowler, great, Anderson, Broad. They're great bowlers, and I just think. This is a strong team, but again, there's not really much coordination, especially with the bowlers. Like sometimes I'm questioning, like, are they here on a reset or are they trying to win? Because based on their team selection, England's team selection, it seems like they're here for a reset because they've left out their two main bowlers. Their batting is looking slightly different from the Ashes. They've got Dan Lawrence coming in, they've got Alex Lees, they've got Saki Mahmood in, Matthew Fisher, and Ollie Robinson's obviously a question of his fitness. But to me, the selection looks like a reset, but then when they're playing, it doesn't feel like a reset. It feels like they're trying to win because you got Saki. If you're trying to have a reset, then why Saki Mahmood, your fifth bowler? I think it was the second test, something. You're the fifth bowler. So I don't think they're really planning this well, England. And I think the team, I think the team's pretty strong, but there just needs to be, I think, one of the main bowlers, either one of Stuart Broad or Anderson, one of them has to come back for just one tour, maybe two tours, and then pass on that information to their younger bowlers. And then I think after that, and once England are coordinating a bit more and then they understand what they want to do, then I think they'll have a much stronger team. But I don't think there's anything wrong with the skill of the players at the moment.
Yeah, I sort of agree, but I still don't think England have their strongest team. In terms of batting, Alex Lees, honestly, he's seeming okay. He's not exactly like got off like ducks in a row. He's actually scored 31. I think he scored something in his 30s. He's looking all right, but I would still. I don't know. I'm a Rory Burns fan, so I think I'd bring him in. But also in terms of bowling, like it's a fact of utilizing what you've got now. Like, if you're going for a reset, we get it that you have to change things, but why would you change something that isn't broken? Why would you take off Stuart Broad, for example? I get Jimmy Anderson, you want to hold him on for the summer, but like Stuart Broad is potentially could have still 3-4 years left of his career as a bowler and leading England's pace attack. With the lack of experience we have now, I think that's what we need. And people like Chris Wokes, Craig Overton, especially overseas, they're just indifferent. Like they've not got a single variation. There's not really that much difference in them, like that will give that focal point to the bowling attack. And Stuart Broad does do that. It's not as if he takes wickets everywhere. There's an argument for Jimmy Anderson not being able to take wickets and not having the same impact overseas. But with Stuart Broad, there isn't that argument. So I just don't get why they've done that. But anyway, that even forgetting that, it was just in general, there's just been a lack of in terms of bowling attack. There's been a lack of clear plan. There's just been a pointless. There's been a lot of pointless. Sometimes there was a bit of short bowling in the previous test that was just useless. In this test, some of the short bowling was actually quite effective, but it really depends on the conditions, and that's what England got to bear in mind. There's no specific plan for every test. There's no plan for like a blanket plan for all tests. It's dependent on each test and the conditions. But anyway, as long as obviously the players coming under question, there's also been a question of Joe Root's captaincy, and in terms of his captaincy, there's been a big push, especially like on social media, for example. Like I was looking on the BBC Sports stream where there's like people texting and things, and a lot of them were saying, Joe Root just Joe Root's not got the tactical ability to be a captain. He's just favouring his own, like people he's giving too much loyalty to certain bowlers and not playing to actually give their side a chance. And then there's like a obviously when you've got a team for like 8 wickets down and then you somehow let them score like an extra and they've scored like 230. It's a new day. You've got new fresh bowlers, slept and rested and got ready, and that you can't let a team score an extra 60 runs. That's an extra quarter of runs. So that's actually 60 runs in that scale is a huge amount. And that's how much West Indies managed to add to their overnight total, and it managed to give them a lead of like 90 in the end. And it was really because the lead of 90 when when England have only scored 200, that's nearly an extra half of their innings, extra lead. So it took them, and considering how shaky England's batting was, that was so detrimental to their overall score, because they only scored 104 for 8 and they were only 10 runs in the lead. So where do you think Joe Root, how much do you think you blame Joe Root for this? And is there any specific incidences or specific actions that you think Joe Root should be blamed for? And yeah, that's pretty much it, Jade.
Yeah, so obviously you think you know there's something going wrong in the England camp when you've been thrashed by Australia in the Ashes and you're not doing particularly well against the West Indies. Like, obviously there's got to be questions raised, and Root, I just think he's been captain for a while now, and I just think that we're starting to find out that Root maybe he isn't the best decision maker. Maybe maybe he's under a bit too much pressure now. Like I just think Root, he's just struggling really. I don't think he's the correct man for captain. I think we should. He's a great batsman, by the way. He's amazing batsman, I think. So I just think Root he's just really like. I don't think there's anyone else really to be captain instead of him. I just think Root decision making as a whole hasn't been up to the mark. It just needs to be. If he is going to continue being captain, it's got to be better. He's got to like think carefully about what he's doing, because sometimes it's just he's not thinking everything through. And I guess like we can't blame him too much, because like obviously he's got batting. He's got his batting to be worried about, and the bottom is he's been batting amazingly past few years. But I just think Root isn't the correct man, and then the problem comes when who else can you put as captain? Now, the only other obvious person would be Ben Stokes, but even with him, we don't know how he's going to go. Like, I've never seen him captain testing before, so I just think Root kind of captain by default, and there's no real other option for England, and they've got to find one soon, because Root isn't going to hang around that long, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I think if you're going to do a complete reset, and there was a huge big deal in social media and just about general leadership, they were making a big deal, we're going to change, we're going to, completely rewrite this team. You can't have the same captain, because it's the same captain means same ideas, same philosophy as such, same, mentality, and that's causing England issues because they're not scoring enough runs. And obviously there's the physical, cricket ability side to it. But as you've said, the players that we've got in our team they are all talented. They're all good players. But then if a captain can't shape them up and make a good team out of them, then is he really a good captain? No, and that's the truth. And it's something that a lot of fans are going to find hard to accept, but it is the truth. But then, I think England should give Ben Stokes a shot at it. I'm trying to think who else could really be a captain. There's no one. You could say Johnny Bairstow. To be fair, I think you could, but he wouldn't be a long-term option anyway. He obviously could. He probably plays for like a couple, 3-4 years, but it's not really. It's not really. He's also like he's in the team, and he's probably going to be in the team constantly now. But I still, it wouldn't be your. He's still not. I don't think he has enough tactical ability as well. Like you wouldn't. I wouldn't picture Johnny Bairstow as a captain. But yeah, it's just a lack of options in a way. There's just a lack of options. As well as like our captain, there's also been a change in personnel like up top in terms of the managing director and head coach. We've got interim head coach in the form of Paul Collingwood, who's a former England batter, and then we've also got our managing director, which is Sir Andrew Strauss. These both are just for temporarily until we find a permanent one. But Paul Collingwood has already said that he wants to be head coach? Will he be interested in being head coach permanently? Say, what do you think for a head coach? What do you think of the characteristics or like the certain focus that incoming head coach should have, like in terms of how the players perform, and how do you think what they need to do to make our test team into a much better test team?
So yeah, you've got to like looking at the England's current situation in especially in Test cricket. Obviously, they're doing poorly. As a coach, you've got to have that like skill to be able to sort of make something out of nothing. You know, because like England haven't are struggling. They don't really know what they're doing really, and obviously Root's decision making. We talked about that. So you've got to have a coach that um has some experience, and you've got to have a coach that can help the team work out something, plan something for the next couple of years. We saw back in a while ago with Justin Langer when he came in to the Australian team, they were completely dead there, and the way him and Tim Payne managed to form Australia, they got their respect back, and you know um, made Australia much better again. So that we need a coach something like that. And obviously the caps is different. A cap's a completely different discussion. But I think as a coach, you've got to have that the main thing you've got to have is be able to make something out of nothing. Like you've got to like have you can't. So a lot of coaches will be good when the team's got something already, But like at the moment, England haven't really got much, and as a coach, you've got to have that like patience with your team and be able to create opportunities, find players. Because when it comes to especially Test cricket, there are loads of players out there, but it's like who can actually play under those difficult circumstances? Who has the mental ability to do so? Because a lot of players they won't have they won't be they won't be different in terms of skill, but they will be in terms of mental ability. And as a coach, you've got to be able to spot that and be able to work that out. So I think the main things that an England coach has got to have is to be able to make something out of nothing and have that patience to work with the England team.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. This is not a short-term project. This is a long-term project, and we need someone who can be committed enough to sustain it to get back up to the top of Test cricket, and that will, like the ODI reset that we recently had, from 2015 to 2019 is like the period. It's going to be it's a long project. It's not going to happen in the next year. Well, obviously we'd hope so, but I don't think it will. Yeah, that's pretty fair, but also as well as thinking like who is the next head coach, you've also got, do you want a white ball coach and a red ball coach separately or one coach altogether? We've had one coach altogether in the form of in our previous coach. We've had Paul Collingwood as a coach in all three formats. Chris Silverwood initially it seemed like he did an amazing job, winning the ODI World Cup, and then oh sorry, no, what am I saying? That was Trevor Bayliss. But yeah, so Chris Silverwood led us from there. We were at probably like a peak, and we managed to sustain that in terms of short ball formats. But since then, it's sort of like the emphasis on short ball formats has coincided with the crumble of Test cricket, and there's not really been any improvement. Do you think that white ball and red ball should be separate or should be together? And what are the benefits of each? What was the benefits of having them together? One coaches for all three, or having coaches separately for both formats?
Yeah, I think there should be a separate coach for white ball and red ball because they're the same game, but I just think there's a completely different format. Like in T20 cricket and ODI cricket, white ball cricket, you've got to be playing. It's just there's a different approach to the game, and some coaches will be good with helping a team go through that rather than having that red ball test match sort of format where you're just hanging on, like just staying there. You're not really looking for runs. You're getting them slowly. You're looking for wickets. In white ball cricket, it's a bit different. Like you're obviously looking for wickets, but you can't let go too many runs as well. And I just think like it both like the format, like white ball, it's all about runs and stopping those runs. Like as a batsman, you're scoring runs. Wickets, like yeah, it doesn't matter as much as in red ball cricket. So I think And in terms of bowling, then you're looking for wickets, but you're also looking to stop running bowl your Yorkers, bouncers. You're not going to bowl Yorkers in red ball cricket unless like really situation advantage. You're going to be bowling good line and length, but if you bowl that in white ball cricket, you're going to get whacked for six. Like that's literally in the slot. But that's not going to happen in red ball cricket. They're going to be playing, leaving the ball, playing and missing, driving. They're going to be playing classic shots that we've seen back in 1980s, 1990s cricket. So I think you've got to have two different coaches, because I think if one coach can focus on red ball cricket, then they don't have to think about the other side of cricket. Think about white ball cricket, which is really a completely different format, and you have to play differently. And similarly, if you have a white ball coach, then they don't have to be concerned about what's going on with the red ball setup, because they're obviously not the coach. Because I just think it's much easier to have two different coaches. Now, I'm not sure what the players think of that, but obviously you've got to have that sort of agreement with the players and the coaching stuff. So obviously you've got to have that discussion. But I think that two coaches for two different formats, I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, and you sort of led on to the next point, which is like how the players adapt to having two different leadership. There's going to be two different styles completely. The fact about two different formats, it's that the batting is just completely different. The amount of patience you need in red ball cricket, as well as the amount of control, discipline, and then you've also got white ball cricket where the risk to reward rate is different. That early on there's a lot more reward, but there's a high risk, and in Test cricket, early on there's a lot more risk, but there isn't as much reward. There's no need to hammer through and score very rapidly. You can go at 1-2 runs and over, and then accelerate as the ball gets older. It's a different, like if you were to put it on a graph in terms of when you accelerate and then when you deaccelerate. You can see that in red ball cricket, it's always at the first 10 overs will be a lot of acceleration, especially like ODI, first 6 in T20. Then it might start to slow down a little bit. Then if you get to the last 10 in ODI and the last 4 or 5 in T20, it's going to start re-accelerating. Whereas in Test, it's pretty different. It starts off slow, middle overs, you really have to accelerate, and then it might get, as a new ball comes back, it might slightly dip a little bit. So it's a completely different game, and it's just too hard to keep one coach covering all of it. But if they do, there's going to be a lot more pressure on them. There's going to be a lot more expectation, because they can't put their efforts for purely on Test cricket and then let ODI and T20 just fade. You've got to have that balance. So yeah, I would agree with that, and I'd say that it's a lot better to have the two separate coaches. But the real question is, can you get two separate coaches? You need to have two coaches who are willing to do, a coach is willing to do ODI and T20, and a coach is willing to do Test. We'll see, that there are possibilities, but it's not definite at the moment, and it's not very it's not guaranteed at the moment. Like you could easily get a coach for all three. Yeah, that's pretty much it for our talking about English cricket. I think we've had enough of talking about English cricket. Too much sadness, but yeah, the IPL actually started on Saturday with CSK versus KKR. Last episode with John Batham, we did talk about 10 teams and IPL having two extra teams. What benefit does it have? Is it going to make anything better? The reasons for it and things like that. But we didn't really talk about the actual IPL format and the way it's going, because it's quite a different format to last year. So there are two groups now, and they're seeded based on how many times they won the IPL. So with Mumbai being one group, and then Chennai in the next group, because Mumbai won the IPL 5 times. I think Chennai won it 4. I'm not sure, but and then they go like that, and then there's two groups split 5 teams each. Obviously Lucknow and Gujarat separate groups, because none of them this is their first season, so they can just be in separate. So each team will play the teams in its group twice. So for example, Mumbai will play all the other 4 teams in its group twice, meaning 8 matches. Mumbai will also play all the teams in the other group once, which is an extra 5 matches, so 13 total. And then one other team they will also play, but that's picked in a draw that they will do once the first 13 have done, I think. So in total they're going to play 14 matches. Then all teams do this, and then there's the usual eliminator. Honestly, I just don't get it. Why would you make a system so complicated? Why 2 groups? Why you play teams in each group twice? Teams in each group once. Like, if for a new person, someone who's relatively interested in cricket, and just for them to understand, this whole complicated system, I just don't see the point. So, what do you feel about this whole system, and what do you feel about the necessity on it, as well as the groups as well? How do you feel they are? just in general, what do you think about the new IPL 2022?
Yeah, because like IPL is different. It's probably the biggest T20 franchise tournament in the world, and so many people they're new to cricket, they turn to the IPL. In India, you've got thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people that watch cricket, and they're massive fans of cricket. Lots of people watch the IPL, and with this new format, it kind of just feels a bit random. Like you got two groups, and yet you're playing people in the other group as well, and you're playing teams in the other group, and it's just why, like, it's just a bit, feels a bit unnecessary. And like I don't understand, why can't they just do the normal thing, it used to be 8 teams, you play the other 7 teams twice. Maybe if you do that now, it might get a bit too much, but why not just do that? There are 10 teams, just play the other 9 teams once. Why not just do that? Because it just makes a bit more sense. I think doing this, firstly, it makes that, I think there are more matches now, because each team plays 14, and there are 10 teams, not 8. So that's even longer. For the players who are not going to be playing that much, who are just really there to gain some experience from the top players, then that's just 2 months of their whole year gone down the drain. They haven't played a single match. 2 months is a lot of time in a year. So I just think this new format, firstly, it's confusing for um just a normal person like you and me, who's just watching IPL with fans of the IPL. We enjoy it. It's just like it takes ages to work out what's actually going on. Secondly, it's just for actual players, it's so long, like 2 months of 14 games. It's a lot of like mentality has to be gone into it. And I just think it's just unnecessary. Like if I was firstly, I wouldn't even add the two new teams. Like I don't think that's necessary, but we talked about that last week. And secondly, I just think if you've done it, then just go back to the usual thing, like 10 teams, and play nine. Just play each team once. It's just much easier for people to understand. And it's just, yeah, I'm sure it must have taken some of the players even a bit of time working out what's going on. So I just think this is unnecessary, and I would have gone with the usual format of last year.
Yeah, honestly, the only difference, like in terms of the only point in doing this is just to get more matches, which means a more commercial revenue. Like obviously, the IPL will benefit by getting two. It'll get a load of money. I think it's like some of these teams, in order to put two new teams, the people who own the teams had to bid like loads of money. Like I think it was near £1 billion. So the IPL's gonna get all that money. Excuse me, and they'll also get loads of money from commercial rights, because the more matches means more times to put sponsorships and etc. and put more imprint on people's mind, get more sales. It's basically a money thing. It's just them trying to get more money. And if you look at 2019 World Cup, for example, there was 10 teams, each team played each other once, and in there it was a very good sized tournament. It kept you captivated, kept you interested. And with the IPL, when you've got like 70 matches or something, however many it is, it's just so boring in the end, because like you're obviously everyone's always really interested at the start of the IPL, and also the very end when they're looking, oh my god, who's going to come which place, etc., etc. But then in that middle stage, it's going to get really dead, because there's just too many matches, and it's going to go on forever and ever. You want the IPL to be like a short 1 month, 1.5 month tournament that keeps you really interested and excited. Otherwise, it's like, it's like, oh my god, it's coming. The IPL's come back again. It's just been 10 months. It's come. Honestly, I just don't see a point. And in terms of players' workload, you mentioned about people, who are picked in the squad might be like on the fringes, don't really play that many matches, like one or two. That's a waste of their time, because they could be playing more regular cricket in different tournaments, or they could be like, going back to their home countries and training. Um, Also the fact that the people who are playing day in, day out in every match, they're going to be very physically and mentally exhausted. As a bowler, I would be exhausted. And even a batter, it's just tiring, just being on and on and on. And it's just going to be, I think it's going to be too much. And there's going to be a lot of, it's going to be a lot of rotation as such. But that means, with rotation, means you're not playing the strongest team you're not playing the strongest team every match. And also injuries will come up. There's just so many like problems there to it. If you just done what you were mentioning, which is like 10 teams, put them all in one group, just play each other once, and then do the semis, finals. You can still do the eliminator system. That's fine. If you really wanted to, then life would be a lot easier for the players. And I think the quality of the cricket will be better. But yeah, overall, I think the quality of the cricket will be a lot better. We've talked about the IPL format. we actually need to talk about, like, CSK KKR, which was yesterday's match. It was a low scoring match. It was sort of an ordinary match in a way. Like, it wasn't anything exciting. I remember last IPL, the first couple of matches, the scores were like 200 runs in 20 overs, very, fireworks, smashing, blah blah blah. This wasn't really like that, and it was, I think, what's his name? It's CSK scored 131 for 5, and KKR scored 134. I think it was 133. They managed to chase it down in 18.3 overs. And the only reason CSK even got that close to a decent total was because of MS Dhoni's 50, something we haven't seen in a while. So it's really, like, surprising for a lot of players. A lot of fans seeing, any hardcore CSK fan would love seeing MS Dhoni score a trademark 50 off 38 balls. He actually was replaced. Well, he stepped down as captain recently, and this is Ravindra Jadeja, who's a new captain. It's his first match in captaincy, and they did lose. Zaid, any specific highlights of the match that you would say?
Yeah, definitely. MS Dhoni, as you said, got 50 of 38 balls, I think. And obviously he batted really well, and something we haven't seen for a long time is, his firepower. Like, he's definitely at the end of his career now. And some of the questions is, like, when is he going to continue on for? Because he obviously retired from Indian cricket, but IPL cricket, it's kind of like, how we just talked about, like, the really long format. It's going to take a very long time. Someone like MS Dhoni, and even CSK, they're like an aging side. They've got players that are like 36, 37 coming to the end of their career. Someone like MS Dhoni, right? He's going to be exhausted. I think a couple of years ago, there was, like, near the end of the tournament, there was a stage where he was batting, and I think it was the final, maybe he was batting, and then he had trouble breathing, and that's purely because of this massive format. 14 games constantly. You're playing a game every 2 or 3 days. That's not easy, especially with someone like MS Dhoni. So I just think that's something that's got to be addressed. And also, in terms of highlights, I think there wasn't really much on off, really. Like, it was just CSK completely misfired. Right? I'm not really worried about their batting, actually. I think Gaikwad and Conway, they're very good players, and they'll be fine in the future, I think. Robin Uthapar, he showed a glimpse of what he can do. Rayudu, we've seen him over the years, he's pretty good. And I just think, obviously, Jadeja, new as captain, and that'll be interesting to see how he goes on in the future. But I think CSK, they kind of just misfired. I think that's not really what they're capable of. And in terms of KKR, I think Rahane at the top did really well. We got like 45 or something, and in decently quick time. And then at the end there, you got Sam Billings. I think I watched a little period and he was reverse sweeping everything. So it's quite interesting. And for me, the main highlights would be CSK's MS Dhoni and KKR at the top there with Rahane and Venkatesh Iyer with a solid start and powering their way through. And in the end, it was a bit of a struggle, but it was a bit of a fight, but they did get over the line pretty comfortably in the end.
Yeah, I know. There's been a big shake-up in CSK's team, so you can't expect the exact same team as last year. You got Faf du Plessis have gone, the huge run scorer, I think scored 500, 600 runs last season. So you're right about CSK's aging team as well. I think this season they'll be able to survive, and they can put a launch, and they can try and win the title. But I think next season it's going to really affect them. I think, like, I'm expecting MS Dhoni to retire, Ambati Raidu and Robin Uthapar will probably play, but they're not exactly lighting up the tournament, are they? They're sort of like your forgotten heroes as such. So honestly, I'm not really betting on them. But yeah, there's another match today as well, and there's just going to be constant matches. You're going to have something to watch, and it's all on Sky Sports. So if you have Sky Sports, you'll be able to watch loads of matches. But yeah, it's going to be good. IPL is always good, but it's whether the quality of it's whether the players' welfare is being looked at as a real question. We won't be able to see it very clearly, but the players could be struggling, and it's not really fair on them to be forced to play this many matches. They're getting paid loads, congrats to them, but they're also going to consider player welfare, which is something that needs to be at the forefront of the IPL board committee in their mind, because I think it's going to really cause some detriment to the players. But yeah, anyway, Let's go on to any other in general, just past cricket in the last week. We've also had the Australia-Pakistan test series come to a close. The first two tests were a draw, and the third test actually looked like it was going to be a draw until a late fight back from from Australia meant they bowled out Pakistan and actually won the last test, so it was 1-0. The first two pitches were pretty dead. This third pitch had a bit more life in it, but still, there needs to be a look into the pitches. Honestly, I think there needs to be a look into the pitches in Pakistan, because they're really dead and there's literally no life in them. And when you've got Test cricket and there's no life in the pitches, it's literally just who can score the most runs for fun. It's just no struggle. The bowlers just bowl and they toil away with no success. They need something. The pitch needs to offer something. Do you agree with that, Zaid?
Definitely, like there's no point having a pitch which is just easy for the batsman to score runs on, and the bowler can't really do anything. And in the modern day, in the modern era in cricket, bowling's already hard enough, in the white ball format, and it's just bowling is almost impossible in the white ball format. It's really difficult, and in the Test format, that's the only place where bowlers actually get a chance to really showcase beautiful line length delivery, beautiful swing, beautiful spin, whatever it is. And I just think if you're making pitches like that, that's just ridiculous. Like, why on earth are you making just pitches? Like, Pakistan have really got to look into this, and whenever their next series is, improve their pitches and put something in there for the bowlers. There's no point having cricket, which is just teams batting for a day and a half and getting 300, 400 runs, and then coming to stage, oh, we need to declare now. Like it's really nice to see someone declare, but it's always nice to see runs as well. But yeah, I always enjoy seeing like a nice, maybe a nice swing ball that unplayable delivery or something that the batsman plays and misses or edges it to first slip or something, because that's something I really like to see, and it just means that the competition is much more interesting and engaging. It just, for me, like the couple of minutes I've seen, the short amount of time I saw the Australia Pakistan series test match was just, I saw a hot humid ground with a dry pitch that looked like there was nothing in it for anyone, and just batting, which is literally really, really wanted me to turn off my TV straight away and move on to something like the IPL or something. So I think there's really got to be something looked into the Pakistan pitches, and then once they've done that, then there can be much more interesting play for the bowlers, especially.
Yeah, it's not a very good advertisement of Test cricket in general, and it's not exactly doing things to bring more people watching Test cricket. But yeah, apart from that, we also had the Women's World Cup. England women did manage to qualify by beating Bangladesh, and it was a very shock turnaround considering they lost their first three matches, then they won the next four on the trot. They've also the England women have guaranteed qualification, as well as Australia, South Africa. Now it's really the battle between India, West Indies, who are the two teams that could qualify. India need to win the current match they're playing against South Africa in order to qualify, whereas if they don't win it, then West Indies automatically qualify. In terms of upcoming cricket for next week, you've got the Women's World Cup semi-final on Tuesday and Thursday, and then a final on Sunday. I think the semi-final, we don't know to confirm who's going to be playing each semi-final, but I think it could be either Australia and England, and then Australia and either India and West Indies, one of the two, and then South Africa and England. So it's going to be interesting. But I wouldn't hope for England to win. I think the competition's too tough. They might just get knocked out in the semis. But if they do manage to win the whole World Cup, it'll be a completely shocking comeback story by far. And considering you've lost the first three, momentum's against you, and then you win the next four and just continue winning, it's just crazy. It's honestly ridiculous. But we've got to hope they could do it. They've got a talented team, but they've got to improve their fielding, and they've got to sort out consistency in batting. But anyway, apart from that, we've also got the Pakistan Australia ODIs, which is following the Test series. I think this will be even more of an even contest, especially because Pakistan have got a pretty good ODI team in comparison to their Test team, and then obviously Australia a very dominant force in ODIs. And then obviously, as we mentioned before, the IPL is still going on. You're going to have a lot of matches, and at the moment there isn't much to talk about because there's only been one, but by next week there should be at least another 4 or 5 matches at least. So yeah, there'll be a lot more results, and we get to see the two new teams, Lucknow Super Giants and Gujarat Titans in action. which would be really nice to see because personally, looking at Super Giants looking really strong. I think they're looking very, very good. But yeah, that's it from us today. Thank you, Zaid. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy this podcast. It really helps us. But apart from that, that's it. So thank you, Zaid.